Now moving on to chapter 3, European Zionism. Now this chapter goes a little bit deeper into the origin of what European Zionism is, the ideology that takes place in terms of why itself Palestine was essentially, they seem and they term Palestine to be liberated to the Jews. Now here we have various different subsections that we're going to go over. Now first of all, what is Zionism, right? That is, it's a very term that is thrown around a lot extensively and is something that is politicized significantly, right? Now first of all, Zionism itself emerged in the 1800s as a movement advocating for the establishment of a Jewish national or religious community in Palestine. Now the term Zion is Hebrew for a hill near Jerusalem, symbolizing a central location for Jewish identity. Now, the historical significance of Zionism is that in 1897, the first Zionist Congress was led by Theodor Herzl, and essentially laid the foundation for the Zionist movement. Now, after the Second World War, Jewish Holocaust survivors of the European descent migrated to Palestine, further solidifying the idea of an independent Jewish nation. Now, during this time period specifically, the Zionists, specifically Theodor Herzl, even approached the Ottoman administration at that time. It was at that time Sultan Abdul Hamid, who they approached the administration to sell land to Palestine to essentially ensure that to consolidate the debt of the Ottoman Empire at that time. But during this time and during this place, he did not allow it, and as a result, further animosity grew between the Zionists and the Muslims. Now this is a quote that I was mentioning from Abdul Hamid II, where he says, as a result, when Theodor Herzl came to his visit, he said, "I cannot even sell a foot of land, for it does not belong to me, but to my people. My people have won this empire by fighting for it with their own blood, and have fertilized it with their blood, and we will cover it again with our blood before we allow it to be wrestled away from us." So this was the response, the original response from the Ottoman Empire to the Zionist movement. Now, there is significant diversity within Zionism, where Zionism encompasses various different beliefs, whether they be social, political, religious, with both religious and non-religious adherents. Right-wing Zionists are rooted in religious beliefs, while left-wing Zionists are more secular and emphasize peaceful coexistence with the Arabs. Now, the creation of Israel was the first element of the independent state and marking a significant milestone for the Zionist movement's objectives. Now, this leads us to a very contentious topic of anti-Semitism, right? Is that nowadays there is a declaration that anybody who is anti-Zionist is anti-Semitic. And so the first thing that we have to understand is the definition and the historical context of what anti-Semitism actually is. And so really anti-Semitism is a form of discrimination or opposition or hatred toward Jews. And it began to rise in the 19th century. And so these were essentially tensions among Jewish populations due to increasing incidents of anti-Semitism. And so really anti-Semitism originated in Europe at that time and forced many individuals to be displaced within Europe, and this led to historical events such as the Holocaust, that displaced millions of Jews and led to their death as well. Now, there are many misconceptions about what anti-Semitism actually is, and it is extremely important to differentiate between criticizing what the Israeli government's policies are and being anti-Semitic. So as an example, analyzing Jews as an unjust people is an example of anti-Semitic behavior, but indicating that anti-Zionism or that Zionism has led to the displacement and death of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians is not something that is not inherently anti-Semitic. Now, some argue that criticizing Zionism can be done without negating the Palestinian experience, while others equate it with anti-Semitism. Now here we can see that the importance to Israeli and Jewish identity is that Israel holds significant cultural and historical importance for Jews, making criticism of its policies sometimes emotionally charged. Now there is an interconnection between Judaism and Zionism as a whole, where right-wing Zionists draw their beliefs from Judaism and assert that the land of Israel itself is the rightful Jewish homeland. Now the historical perspective says that initially Orthodox Jews were hesitant to embrace Zionism due to its secular nature. As a result, over the last few decades, there has been an emergence of religious Zionism, where over time, as the population of Orthodox Jews in Israel increased, a movement known as religious Zionism or right-wing Zionism gained traction. And here you can see that there is a shared objective between both Judaism and Zionism, where they want an establishment of a Jewish state in Israel. Now, the first Prime Minister of Israel, by the name of David Ben-Gurion, here he has a quote, which is something that can kind of really take us home in terms of what's actually going on in the situation, where he says, and I quote, "Let us not ignore the truth amongst ourselves. Politically, we are the aggressors, and they defend themselves. The country is theirs because they inhabit it, whereas we want to come here and settle down, and in their view, we want to take away from them their own country." So really you can see that the first Prime Minister of Israel, the first leader of Israel, is telling us from the historical perspective that the Palestinians themselves have a right to inhabit Israel, and they themselves, the Israelis, the Zionists who are coming in, they are the ones who are aggressing those who had originally inhabited there and their own country. Now his insight was that he acknowledged the role of Israel as political aggressors and recognized the Palestinian defense in the conflict. And as a result, he played a vital role in advancing the establishment of the State of Israel. He founded and established the Israeli Defense Forces, and he essentially emphasized the biblical understanding of Israel, where he believed in the Bible's significance for comprehending Israel's past, present, and future. Now he also had a role in pre-independence massacres, where he had a significant role in dreadful events such as the Balad al-Sheikh massacre, the Sasa massacre, and the Deir Yassin massacre that preceded Israel's independence. And so this massacre that took place essentially involved 3 Zionist militias, resulting in the brutal killing of over 100 Palestinian men, women, and children, with some subjected to mutilation and rape. Ben-Gurion also directed the policy of Haganah, which was one of the 3 militias that were involved in the Deir Yassin massacre. Now here we can go into the false narrative of Zionism, one of the things that chapter 3 looks at a little bit in more detail. Where, number one, we can see that Israel itself has a very, very diverse population. The Jewish population of Israel is very, very diverse. Israel itself comprises of various different ethnic, cultural, and religious groups, with 2 major historical Jewish groups that are there. The first are Arab Jews, and the second are European Jews. Now, historically, there has been a discrimination against Arab or Mizrahi Jews, where these Jews face discrimination and marginalization within Israel, especially within areas of education, housing, and employment. Now, these quote-unquote Arab Jews originated in the Middle East and have a complex history originating in the Middle East and North Africa, and they were forced to leave their homes due to political unrest. Now, over the last few decades specifically, we can see that there has been an unequal treatment and marginalization of Arab Jews, and they face challenges of integration and disparities within education, housing, employment, contributing to a level of cultural erasure. But here you can see that the law of return through gaining citizenship favored European Jews rather than those who were Arab Jews, creating division and a sense of second-class citizenship amongst Arab Jews. Now again, this led to inequality within education, housing, and employment, and resulted in privileges for European Jews, where there was a wage gap and access to services, and generally cultural discrimination and marginalization amongst Arab Jews. And so here, as a result, you can see that there are historical and both political factors that contributed to this, where the prioritization of European Jews in immigration policies, along with the Israeli and Arab conflict, have contributed to incredible amount of tensions between Arab and European Jews. And really what this showcases is the false narrative of Zionism, which showcases a colonial aspect where the ones who are European are prioritized, but the ones who are native, the ones who are Arab, are not prioritized as a result. And this again showcases the colonial nature of Zionism within Israel during this time. Now let's move on to settler colonialism. Now, number one, the Israeli settler colonialist movement seeks to establish and expand Jewish settlement in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. It is characterized by both violence, displacement, and land theft. Now, this has had a significant impact on Palestinians, where they were subjected to human rights violations, including restricted movements and limited access to healthcare and education. Since 1967, Israel has also pursued settlement expansion with violation of international law, facilitated through the construction of Jewish-only settlements, land confiscation, and home demolition. And here you can see that there is both impunity and lack of accountability within the situations, where settlers are often protected by Israeli military, acting with impunity, and the Israeli legal system is often criticized for allowing lenient sentences or acquittals for those who engage in these types of practices. Now, number 5, challenges for Palestinian resistance. Now, oftentimes settlers experience and operate in heavily militarized areas, making resistance difficult for Palestinians. Now, we'll go into a little bit detail in this in some future chapters, but both the UN and human rights perspective has indicated that the UN labels settler violence as a form of terrorism, where human rights organizations call for an end for Israeli impunity for settler violence. And as a result, this has had a significant long-term impact in both peace and justice, where as long as settlers continue to act with impunity, situations for Palestinians will continue to remain dire, and prospects for peace and justice in the region will remain remote. Now lastly, in this chapter, we go into a little bit of detail about Jews against Zionism. Now this kind of is a unique perspective because some Israelis like to equate anti-Semitism with Zionism. But if you have Jews who are against Zionism, this kind of breaks that fold in that way. And you can see that there is a significant historical background to Jews against Zionism as well, where the roots of the movement opposing Zionism date back to the early 20th century, where famous figures such as Rabbi Aaron Kotler opposed the creation of a Jewish state based off of moral and religious grounds. But some Orthodox Jewish leaders believed that it went against Jewish law to establish a state before the arrival of the Jewish Messiah. Now, Zionism itself, a political movement for the Jewish state, gained momentum in the late 19th century, especially in Eastern Europe where Jews faced prosecution. Now, Orthodox Jewish views on Zionism indicate that Orthodox Jews had varying views on Zionism, where some opposed it, deeming it incompatible with traditional Jewish beliefs, while others supported it, viewing it as essential for Jewish cultural identity and advancement. Now, this resulted in developments in Orthodox Jewish thoughts, where the discussion on Zionism continued as the movement gained traction, and certain rabbis opposed Zionism, considering it to be a conflict with traditional Jewish belief. Now, this is where Israeli intellectuals have had a significant impact in this, where Israeli intellectuals have significantly influenced Zionist policy and strategy, shaped by their experiences in Israel. While some have viewed Zionism as crucial for Jewish existence, many have actually opposed the existence of the Jewish occupation on Palestine. And so in December 2020, 35 prominent Jewish intellectuals voiced opposition to Israel's plans to annex parts of the West Bank. And this letter essentially warned of political negative consequences, including jeopardizing regional peace and democratic foundations. And this letter sparked discussion and outrage among Jewish and Israeli intellectuals about the role of academics in influencing and affecting public opinion and public policy. Now, before I move on to chapter 4, these first 3 chapters essentially showcase and indicate to us, first of all, the historical context of what Palestine actually is. We went through a little bit of the history of what Palestine is all about, some of the historical oppressions that existed in Palestine during this time. We went into a little bit more detail about the Ottoman history in chapter 2, and really chapter 3 showcases and indicates to us kind of some of the logical fallacies that exist within Zionism, at that time, where many accuse individuals of anti-Semitism, where in fact there are many Jewish intellectuals who oppose this, and as a result we can see that European Zionism and European Jews are prioritized within Israeli society rather than those who are native to their homeland, even if they are Jews. So with that in mind, I'm going to pass it on to the next presenter for chapter 4.